My name is Heidi McEwen. I'm the Executive Director of the Shelton Mason County Chamber of Commerce. With me as well is Lynn Longan, the Executive Director of the Economic Development Council for Mason County. We also have today with us some representatives from the City of Shelton and Mason County as well. So, unfortunately, Senator Shelton was unable to join us today. He had a conflicting schedule. However, he does send his regrets. We are thankful to have with us Representative Drew McEwen and Representative Dan Griffey as well. So, good morning and thank you.
I was going to clap for
him. So many of you are familiar with our representatives, but just to recap, Representative Drew McEwen was first elected to the House in 2012.
It's okay. Loud fairness.
Overstepping your authority, huh?
Yes,
That was really nicely. Representative Drew McEwen was first elected to the House in 2012 and quickly emerged as a leader on issues including tax reform and education funding reform. Drew has brought a bold agenda to the legislature, rooted in his experience as both a business and civic leader in his community. Representative Drew McEwen has been named to 2 budget committees in the House of Representatives and will serve as the deputy budget writer for House Republicans as the assistant ranking member on the House Appropriations Committee.
I hope we clap for him on that one.
He's also the ranking member of the House General Government and Information Technology Committee and serves on the House Appropriations Committee. Additionally, he serves on the Joint Veteran and Military Affairs Committee and the Joint Legislative Audit and Review Committee. Drew served in the United States Navy for 6 years, serving in the submarine force. Drew graduated from the Navy's Nuclear Propulsion Program. Drew was stationed at Naval Base Kitsap, where he developed a strong bond with Western Washington. He went on to complete undergraduate studies at the State University of New York, earning a Bachelor of Science degree. Representative Dan Griffey is beginning his 2nd term. Dan Griffey began his career of service as a volunteer firefighter at 16 and continues now professionally as a lieutenant firefighter. Dan has been married to his wife Dinah for more than 20 years. The Griffeys have 3 daughters and 2 grandchildren. You can find them volunteering in the community, digging clams, hiking the forest trails, and cheering on the Seahawks. Dan is a lieutenant career firefighter at Mason County Fire District 5. He holds a Class A CDL license and has graduated from North Bend Fire Academy. He has fire officer certification and continuing education in the fire service, a 2-year certification in industrial electronics, and is a mechanic. This year, in his 2nd term, he is on the early learning, public safety, and local government committees. Where he is assistant ranking member and assistant whip.
So at this time, we'd like to give you a moment to just reflect on 2016, some of the things that went really well, some of the things that you wish had gone differently, and just kind of a year review your successes as well.
Okay, want to go first?
I'll leave.
Thanks all of you for getting up and spending the morning with us. Speaking for Drew, I'm sure he agrees. We appreciate it. What went right in 2016 is we got done pretty close to on time, which was nice. We couldn't say that about 2015. It was my first year in the legislature, happened to be the longest session in Washington State's history. I don't want to repeat that. So some challenges going into the future. You've seen all of the challenges. You've seen that the governor wants to pass a very massive tax increase that was just rejected by the voters. The exact same thing was rejected wholesalely. So I think we're starting pretty far apart, but like with anything worth doing, is worth working very hard to do. And so we have lots of opportunities right now. The biggest opportunity is we can fundamentally reform education system in Washington State to make sure that every kid gets the education that has enough value that they can actually go get a job with that education. And we can't say that we're doing that great a job right now. We're not doing as good as we could be doing. And I think it's a very exciting time to actually be able to fix it. I'm going to continue to work on local restrictions, growth management restrictions, so our locally electeds can actually help. Basically, they can do their job. They have right now a hard time doing their job, and that every time they try to do a zoning change, or that sort of thing, they kind of have to look at, well, do I want to fight this out in court? We shouldn't have that decision. Our locally elected shouldn't have that decision to think about. They should think, well, yeah, we need to do this, or we don't need to do this for our community. Not, no, I can't do this because we're not going to do this because we're going to get sued. So I'm looking to get some, limited liability protection, so they can make zoning decisions locally and grow our communities. I'm excited to be working on a group that Drew's on too, that we're trying to reinvigorate the Shelton Hills project. And I'm looking forward to seeing that get off the ground this year. And I think we can, with a lot of hard work, get it off the ground this year. It's going to be a fun year. Thanks again for all of you for being here. I am kind of stuttering and my mind's not really clear right now. It's because I just got over the flu. So I apologize if I seem fragmented and disjointed a little bit, but that's why. Anyway, thank you so much.
So in 2016, a couple of items. One that I'm glad on. So we have, most of you know, a biennium budget. So our budget is for 2 years, and then in the even year we do adjustments based on economic forecasts and caseload changes. And we had in 2015, as most of you know, a large number of wildfires in Eastern Washington, excuse me. And we have a budget stabilization account, rainy day fund. And the cost on those was tremendous, and so it takes a super majority to tap those funds. And it's kind of like, imagine if you have maybe a credit card with a very high credit limit on it, and you keep it in the safe deposit box for an extraordinary emergency, and so that happens, and you decide, okay, we're gonna go get it. This is what happened in the legislature, is that so we got the card, and then there was a lot of people who said, well, now that we got it, let's go do this. And there was a big fight in the legislature last year, which is why we went a couple weeks into overtime, because there were many that felt that, well, since we're going to use it, let's use it on everything. And we fought back on that and use it for what it was intended for, and that was for extraordinary and unforeseen emergencies. And so I'm glad that that line got held, because that would have been a very dangerous precedent to set in the state to use the credit limit. Well, it's not really a credit limit. It's a savings account that the state has. So we're not borrowing money, but that we held the line on using that for what it was originally intended. And I'm glad of that. And I won't rehash some of the things Dan talked about. One other item I want to bring up that's a disappointment in 2016, and that's the state Supreme Court decision, the Hirsch decision. And if you're not familiar with this, you will be. So it has a significant negative impact on Mason County and other rural counties. And it was a lawsuit that was started by some environmentalists out of Seattle that, in a nutshell, it's going to be very, very difficult to get a permit to drill a well in a rural county anymore. And that hinders our ability to grow. So there's a possibility we can do some legislative fixes to it, but that's going to be an urban versus rural fight, and that'll be teed up going into this year, and I hope we can prevail on that. So just want to touch on those two items, and we've got obviously McCleary, and that was punted to this year, and so this year is here, and that'll be so going to 2017 now. Is that right?
That's
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there are copies of our 2017 as well as our 2016 legislative priorities. So I just want to hit on kind of the bullet point versions of the 2017. Some of the priorities that we'd like you to consider as you move into session. First and foremost, workforce development, prioritizing career and technical education with increased funding for K-12 education. Education as a whole, and specifically the McCleary decision. We're looking to you to provide real solutions and to remove the courts from the process. Looking at create that address local needs, not one-size-fits-all funding programs overall, and giving the local districts some flexibility to solve problems within our districts. Minimum wage and employee benefit legislation is an area of large concern for Mason County, especially our small business owners. We're looking to you to take into consideration economic and cost of living differences in rural areas, and to acknowledge that any statewide mandate decreases employer flexibility, and requiring additional benefits can have unintended consequences for both the employer and employee. So we ask you to be very careful as you move forward in implementing. Resource industries, we feel that it's extremely important to reach out to our new Commissioner of Public Lands to ensure the understanding of the economic, environmental, and social importance of forest products and aquaculture. Long-term solutions in the natural resource arena should include an acknowledgement of the carbon sequestration of managed forest lands. And we're looking to you to ensure that rural areas are involved in new markets such as cross-laminated timber. Task and fiscal policy, we know that there will be discussion addressing major changes and interpretations of tax laws that have previously resulted in uncertainty, inconsistency, and inequitable treatment for taxpayers. We have some statistics about Washington State and looking at the business share of state and local taxes. We ask that you are protecting the predictability of the tax code and structural tax incentives. We'd like you to set the priority of governments as we continue to support your efforts in this area to promote elimination of agency and program redundancies, regulatory overreach, and to support real action towards reform and permitting processes. Capital budget and transportation. We strongly feel that the capital budget should include funding for important economic development investments, and specifically to make sure that projects such as the Belfair Bypass and Simmons Road are funded and on schedule. We also ask that you oppose regulations from any agencies that can unnecessarily drive up costs for our transportation projects. We're looking to you to improve incentives for local infrastructure developments. It's critical to the state's ability to grow and attract business, and that you provide options and tools to enable economic development, such as value capture financing, local revitalization funding, and local incentives that encourage industrial development. We're looking to you for our unfunded mandates. Our local governments are working hard to provide basic services to their citizens. Adding some of these mandates to the mix pushes our budget crisis to an even more grave level, as unfunded mandates are often cited as problems generated at the state level. We commit to help identify these in our area so that solutions can be sought. And finally, on rulemaking, rules that are being proposed by state agencies should include a description of how they would impact economic development and creation. Specifically, WashDOT has utilized these metrics and they've been very helpful. So, again, we do appreciate the hard work that you put in supporting our small business industry in Mason County as a whole, and we'd like to hear some comments from you on our 2017 priorities.
I can go first. I went first before. It's like I wrote it. This is a very good agenda, and if I got half of this done this year, I would be a rock star. But very good priorities. I do like all of them. I think You know, it's important, basically what you read off here is what I tried to tell everybody when they passed the minimum wage increase to such a high level. You know, not a funny, but a terrible side story is I stopped to get fuel this morning and at Ben's, and the guy there was distraught because he's gonna have to lay at least one employee off and maybe two. He's talking with his accountant. And it's really that serious for the smaller businesses, and I think that was the myopic, that was why, you know, people were very myopic in their support of this minimum wage is, I think it's better to have a job than price yourself out of a job. So we're going to be working on that. There's going to be all kinds of effects. When the citizens change law by initiative, we find that there's many holes. It's not a very clean way to do it. So we're going to probably have some fixes that we'll have to enact there. We wanted to have some geographic stability built in as well. However, the initiative did not give that flexibility. So you could see if somebody is in a trucking company, owns a trucking company, and they pay somebody, they start in Olympia, and then they drive through several different jurisdictions, end up in SeaTac or Seattle, they could end up having to pay this truck driver 5 different wages. And that's crazy. So we're trying to come up with maybe a policy that says that your wages based at your geographic location, so where you start and basically where you start your truck up at. So we'll be working on that. Again, I think it's a very good agenda. And again, if we got half of it done, I think we would be rock stars. So thank you so much.
So I'll touch on a couple of items. I'll start at the top here. Workforce development. I think we're starting to finally see a trend here that a recognition that not every kid needs to go to a 4-year school, and there was a big push for a long time that needed to be the case. And we're starting to see that we're lacking in the trades, and we're going to continue to see, I think, shift back towards more of the technical trades and vocational workforce developments. I think that's a positive, and there are high-paying jobs that students can have earlier on in their life, and we need to encourage that. So that I think was a positive there. The education issue, and it just ties into the whole budget. And I just want to lay this out without trying not to get too terribly political, but so the budget. The governor gets to propose a Book 1 and a Book 2 budget. A Book 1 budget is based on current tax policy and current revenue forecast, and so he's got that budget, and then he has a Book 2 budget, which is taking into account everything that he'd like to have happen tax-wise and policy-wise. And that he didn't mention this on the campaign trail, but in that Book 2 budget is $4.5 to $5 billion in new taxes, and so he has given everybody everything. And what you're going to see happen over the next couple of months is, and he also, the governor does not have to have a 4-year balanced outlook. The legislature, we statutorily have to pass a budget that balances out over 4 years. The governor does not have to propose one that does that. So it puts us in a position where we got to deal in the real world, and we got to say, well, no, we're not, last year, agency X, you got $80. The governor says he's going to give you $120. We're going to give you 82, and then you're going to read in the paper that that agency got cut by $38. That's just not the case. That actually went up. So that's the stuff that's going to happen here over the coming couple of months while we deal in the real world. And the same thing happened in 2015. Governor proposed a whole series of taxes, and the budget process got held up with this anticipation that there was going to be these new taxes. Well, the reality is the House never even brought them to a vote, and because they didn't. The House majority on the Democrat side did not have the votes to pass their own tax proposals, but yet somehow blamed us for holding up a budget process that for them wasn't even balanced. And we're kind of in a deja vu again, and with that. So that's going to be an interesting going forward. We're going to see that huge imbalance again, and you have people right now that are very happy because they think they've been given everything, and there'll be a budget proposal that is nowhere near where the governor is at. So that's gonna be a challenge going forward. I reject the notion, and I'm getting frustrated with this, oh, we're gonna be there till July and August. You know what, no, and if anybody says that in the legislature, I'm not supporting their bill for anything. I mean that sincerely, because if that's their attitude now on January 2nd, the hell with them, okay? We have a job to do, and it's time to just get it done, because you know what, if that is the case, if it is June 30th, I guarantee you the vote any one of us on both sides of the aisle will take would be the exact same vote we would have taken in April. And it's just, let's just get this done, and let's just do it and quit playing the games and saying, well, we're holding it up because, you know, we need this. Well, then bring it to a vote, okay? And have the courage, and that goes to both sides of the aisle. So I'm just, again, anybody, I don't care what side of the aisle they're on, if they have that talk, I'm not helping their legislation because we don't need it. We need to get this done. And I think the citizens of the state are quite fed up with that process. So I'm focused on 105 days and getting the job done on time. The tax and fiscal policy, real quick. Like I said, the governor's proposed, again, depending on how you do the math, $4.5 to $5 billion in new taxes, all of which have been rejected by voters, with the exception of the capital gains tax. That's never gone to a vote of the people. But all the other tax proposals he has in there have been rejected at one time or another, in some instances multiple times, by the voters of the state, including the soda tax, the water bottle tax, the carbon tax. The late Senator Andy Hill, who unfortunately we lost this last fall. He was the Senate budget writer, and he lost his battle with cancer. But he always said that tax increases should not be the first answer. That's taking the easy way out, saying, well, we just have to raise taxes. No, you got to sit down and roll up your sleeves and get the job done. At the end of the day, if that's the very last resort, then that's where that conversation should happen, but not at the front of the conversation. And I really believe in that as well. And it's interesting, speaking of Andy Hill, he was the first one, and this will blow you away, this is 2017. When he took over writing the budget in 2013, for the first time the Senate used an Excel spreadsheet for the state budget. The House, we still don't. You get a paper like this, and you're like, you can't make heads or tails of it. I'm going to try to change that, but we'll see. Those are some of the challenges we have when it comes to the budget. But on the tax side, I'm working, I did a B&O reform bill that opened the proverbial Pandora's box on it, and we found out how bad it is. So I'm going to try and take this in chunks. And so what we're going to do, I'm working to have bipartisan support and support in both chambers, hopefully have a companion bill. Working across the aisle on this, and that is to reform our B&O system so that the first $200,000 of business income is not taxed, regardless of whether you're a mom and pop store or you're one of our large tech companies in the state. But to offset it, the rates then would be adjusted. They would go up to offset that income, but it would eliminate the tax for 70% of the businesses in the state, and also remove a paper burden that is on a lot of small businesses. So the majority of businesses in this state would not pay a tax. We would have a rate adjustment, and everybody would get that $200,000. It's not if you make $200,000 in $1, now suddenly you pay tax on the whole thing. No, everybody deducts that $200,000. So working through that right now. And then kind of in tangent with that, on the rulemaking, working on a bill to sunset all rulemaking that occurs either by the legislature, but more importantly by agencies. There's a fine line on this, because there are, a lot of times we in the legislature will pass a bill that creates a law or adjusts the law, and we task an agency to write the implementation of it. Because you don't want the legislature bogged down in some of this. And off the top of my head, I can't think of a very good example which kind of answers that question a little bit. But so we're trying to narrow this down so that rules are going to have to be reaffirmed by the legislature every 5 years, bottom line. And I think that'll help and go a long way. And the capital budget and transportation, I mean, Dan, myself, and Tim are all certainly advocates for the 35th district when it comes to the capital budget and the transportation budget, and specifically to the Belfair bypass and the other transportation projects in this district. There is an opportunity to potentially get these re-ranked and move some of these projects up, which I do believe is be very beneficial to our district, because there is always the Belfair bypass, was in the nickel package. 12 years ago or whenever that was passed. Didn't happen, did it? But it was in the budget. And the reason that happens is because, I mean, I know this comes as a shock, but DOT typically is over time and over budget, and so all these other things get scrapped. And so we're gonna try to get that re-ranked to move up closer and get it going and get it done. So with that, I look forward to questions, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
At this time, we do have a couple of minutes for audience questions, so I'll open the floor. Gary?
Well, I just wanted to talk, not about my favorite subject, but Dan, you talked about the minimum wage, and why it's so important that this is divided between Seattle and rural is the same example, and I represent the businesses in Shelton, and a business that has been on the front looks like a successful business, has been in business for, I'm just gonna say for a short amount of time, but more than 1 year. And I went and talked to them yesterday, you know, and here's the deal, is the good news is they made a profit in this last year. The sad news, it was $300. Okay, there's a huge, we got people, young people, and that are scraping out there for jobs, and along with L&I increases and all this other stuff and all this stuff, the minimum wage should be definitely geologically located. And so that's just a reality that you're going to put more people unemployed in small rural areas. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, that's...
Just a tangent off of that, I'm just gonna be blunt, it's not gonna change that initiative, because you need 2/3 in the House and the Senate, and there's not 2/3 in either chamber. And if there were, the governor would not sign
Probably.
any adjustment, so.
I spoke.
But we're with you, Gary.
Yeah.
Patty?
So, over this last election season, I've never heard so many people talking about the rural-urban divide, and particularly urban legislators are all of a sudden aware of this. So I'm curious how we might be able to take advantage of that. And do you have any specific ideas about legislation that might help rural areas and actually that urban legislators might actually support?
That's a good question, Patty, if you don't mind.
Just so happens that I did not beat him this question.
We actually do find ourselves at a point where urban Democrats, and I don't want to be political, but urban Democrats now find themselves in a position where the rural communities are running away from them, and they want to make rural communities happy. So the good news is there's some willingness right now to pass some reforms, growth management reforms specifically. Also the Hearst decision water fix, it sounds like they're going to be willing to pass that. I don't know what vehicle, but they're going to let at least a couple reform bills through, it sounds like, this year. It's very exciting for me because local government is where they're probably going to bring those bills through. So as Patty said, they do have an opportunity, and it looks like they're willing to move. And I have a bill that I think I would like to see passed, the Rural Economic Redevelopment Bill. It's mine. If that's not the one, it doesn't bother me. I just want some growth management reform so we can manage our own destiny locally.
I think, you know, a positive too on this is the budget writers in both chambers for the first time are not from downtown Seattle. That's for both parties. In the Senate, as I mentioned, Andy Hill passed away. Senator Braun from Chehalis, Centralia, the Twin Cities. Yeah, will be the Senate budget writer, and that's on the Republican side. And in the House, both on the capital budget and the operating budget. So Representative Tim Orsby, who's from Spokane, is on the operating budget, and Steve Theringer, who is from further up the peninsula, from the Port Angeles area, is on the capital budget side. And that's the first time, certainly since I've been in office, and I think in quite a long time, that it's not King County-centric budget writers, and I think that's going to have a positive impact.